Hey, what is up guys? This is Brett here from brettdev.com, and today I'm going to talk about in this video something that I don't think I've spoken about before. I'm going to be talking about why I choose to live in Chiang Mai above all other places in Thailand. So a lot of people reach out to me, a lot of people say, Brett, why don't you live down in Bangkok? Chiang Mai doesn't have a beach. Do you not want to be by the beach? Do you not? What's the deal with Chiang Mai? Why do you like it? Like, why should I go there instead of down south and all this? So in this video, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to give you my reasons for staying in Chiang Mai. I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson, a little bit of a geography lesson on Chiang Mai. And maybe you can watch this. And if you're considering where in Thailand you might want to stay, hopefully this video is going to be able to help you. So to kick things off, for those of you who don't know where Chiang Mai is a city right in the north of Thailand. It has a population of about 1.2 million people. However, a lot of people confuse the city of Chiang Mai with the province. So Thailand's got like 77 different provinces. Chiang Mai is one massive province. And within that province, you've got the district of Chiang Mai, which is basically the city. The district of Chiang Mai, which is obviously the city where I live, only has about 150,000 people around about there. But the province as a whole has 1.2 million, and the province as a whole just takes up a huge chunk of land in the north of Thailand. I'm talking about the actual city. The city is called Muang, okay? So the Muang province. Now, Chiang Mai's got some interesting history, just before we get into things, that I thought you guys might appreciate. So I pulled up some details, done a little bit of research. Basically, Chiang Mai was founded in 1296, and it was the former capital of Lanna. So I'm going to get onto this in just a bit. The capital used to be Chiang Rai. So the capital of Lanna used to be Chiang Rai. Now, this used to be called the Lanna Kingdom. It wasn't Thailand, obviously. This was back like 700 years ago. It used to be called the Lanna Kingdom, and Chiang Mai is the center of the Lanna Kingdom. So people often talk about Chiang Mai. They say it's the home of the Lanna people. Not necessarily, well, they are Thai people now, but before they were Lanna people. Between 1775 to 1899, it became the Kingdom of Chiang Mai. So it was his own kingdom for about 125 years. And between 1899 to 1946, it was the Kingdom of Siam. So it joined Siam, which, as most people know, Siam is what Thailand used to be called. And then in 1946, Chiang Mai became a part of Thailand instead of a part of Siam, because in 1946, the Kingdom of Siam was changed to the name of Thailand. Okay, so just some interesting history about Chiang Mai. And that leads me on to the topic of the video, why I stay here. So there are lots of different reasons why I like Chiang Mai as opposed to Bangkok or Pattaya and other different places. But one of the big reasons is the people. That is the main reason that I choose Chiang Mai over anywhere else. So, as I was just saying, the history of this is important because Chiang Mai historically was a different group of people. And I tell you what, when I go down to Bangkok or when I travel anywhere else in Thailand, down south, I can notice the difference. The people in Chiang Mai are incredibly chilled. They're incredibly laid back. And there's something about them. It almost feels like you are in not a different country, but you're among different people. So one thing I don't like about Bangkok and Pattaya is, the everyday social interactions. I find that people that live in those cities or that live down south are, I find they're a lot more not laid back. They can be a lot more, I don't want to say aggressive, because they're not aggressive, but sometimes you'll find people are a bit off. People aren't so chill. People aren't so smiley. People aren't so happy. Whereas in Chiang Mai, the people are just, it's almost like they don't know how to be unhappy, right? They're just smiling all the time. They're super laid back. They're super chilled all of the time. And that just reflects on me and makes me feel great every single day when I'm up living in Chiang Mai, right? So that's the big reason. And that might have something to do with its history. That's kind of why I broke down and gave you a little history lesson just now. Because historically, Chiang Mai was not a part of Thailand. Historically, Chiang Mai was its own kingdom. It was the Lanna Kingdom. It was the Lanna people. Very strong history, very strong religious Buddhism in this region, and just people are lovely. So that is the main reason that I choose to live in Chiang Mai and nowhere else in the country. But not to say I wouldn't live anywhere else in the country, and I'll get to that at the end of the video. I'll tell you if I wasn't living in Chiang Mai where I'd probably live, but that's the main reason. So moving on to the other reasons why I stay in Chiang Mai, it's so convenient. Okay, so what I love about this city is you can get from, it's not that big. If you stay like the province, sorry, the district of Chiang Mai with 1.2 million people is obviously huge. The province is large, but around the actual center of the city, the old city where I live, where most of the stuff is, you can have access to pretty much anything you want. Okay, there's malls, there's a Tesco's, there's everything you could possibly want, you can get access to in Chiang Mai, and it is so damn convenient. So if you have a motorbike, you could ride from one side of the city to the other side of the city. You could reach anything that you could possibly need within a maximum of 25 to 30 minutes on a motorbike. And that will be like even at rush hour. Okay, so literally one side to the other, you're in arm's reach of everything. Whereas opposed to like if you live in somewhere like Bangkok and you say, okay, I want to go to this store or I want to get like do this thing, you've got to get on a train, you've got to get on the underground. It could take you an hour or two just to go from one side of the city to the other. And I find in Bangkok, because it's so congested, because it's so difficult to get around, you really find yourself, you think like, oh, I'm in Bangkok, I've got access to all of this stuff and, a wider array of entertainment or things to do, which you do have. However, it's so inconvenient to get places that you end up finding yourself confined to just like one particular neighborhood in Bangkok. And people that move to Bangkok tend to pick a neighborhood that they like and stick in a certain neighborhood. And that's actually, for me, more restriction than living in Chiang Mai. Because in Chiang Mai, because of the convenience and because of the ease of getting around with a bike or whatever, you have access to the entire city, right? So you're not stuck in one neighborhood. Like Chiang Mai is your neighborhood. And I think that's absolutely awesome. It's just super convenient. As I say, anything that you could possibly want to buy or anything that you would need, you can get in Chiang Mai. And if there's an odd thing that you can't get, nowadays we've got like Lazada, which is the equivalent to Amazon in Thailand, and you can just order it, okay, and it'll come up from Bangkok in like a day or two. So, there's nothing you can't get in Chiang Mai that you could get anywhere else, if that makes sense. Another massive perk for living in Chiang Mai, which a lot of people don't talk about, is the weather, right? So the weather is a lot cooler up in the north. If you've ever come to Thailand and you've been like, oh my God, it's overwhelmingly hot, I could never live in a place like that because of the heat. Well, I feel you, because when I go down to Bangkok, I get off the plane and it doesn't matter what time of year. Any month of the year, you can go to Bangkok and you get off the plane and you're just sweating constantly. Now, I'm sure maybe you adapt to that heat, but every time I've been anywhere else in Thailand, well, anytime I've been around that region of Bangkok and stuff, it's just overwhelming heat. Like in Chiang Mai, for a good portion of the year, probably 3 or 4 months, in the evening you can put like a light sweater on or whatever, or a hoodie, and you can go out and you can do stuff during the day and not be drenched in sweat. Okay, there is a period where it does get warmer, but it's much more of like a tolerable climate, should we say, compared to down south where it's really hot, and that's something a lot of people overlook. Of course, one of the big massive perks of living in Chiang Mai is the cost of living as well. So Chiang Mai has a not massively, but Chiang Mai does have a lower cost of, sorry, you've got some light on my face, you're gonna have to ignore that, guys. Chiang Mai does have a lower cost of living than everywhere else in Thailand, or most places in Thailand. Certainly has a lower cost of living than Bangkok, a way lower cost of living than Phuket, and that's obviously a benefit. All right, I'm not sure why it has a very low cost of living, because it's awesome. Like can't see any reason. I guess it's just because it's perhaps not influenced so heavily by tourism. Tourists, although they do visit Chiang Mai, you're obviously going to get a lot more tourism down on the beaches. You're going to get a lot more tourism in places like Pattaya, Koh Yang. People come here for a 1 or 2 week holiday. To get to Chiang Mai is actually, well, it's not inconvenient, but it's a detour, right? Most people fly into Thailand, they fly to Bangkok, and to get up to Chiang Mai, you're looking at an overnight train, or you're looking at a flight there and back. It's about an hour from Bangkok on a plane, so you're going to have to book a domestic flight, very cheap, talking like $25. But for some people, if they're coming on holiday and they're here for like 10 days, 2 weeks, they land in Bangkok, they want to go down south, they want to go to the beach. To take a 3, 4, 5 day detour up north is something that not everybody does. So I'm guessing that may be why the cost of living is lower. But if you are staying somewhere long term, or if you do have a a long holiday, then you should definitely come up to Chiang Mai for sure. So many people that have come to that I speak to have been to Thailand for a decade or more, and they've still never been to Chiang Mai, and they have this idea of what they think Thailand is in their head. And I say, if you come to Chiang Mai, it's completely different. The city is extremely clean, whereas most people associate Bangkok, places like that, with being a bit messy and dirty. City's super clean. It's almost like I said right at the beginning of the video. It's like a different place. People are different. The layout's different. The architecture's quite different. It's very, very different if you've not been here to what you're probably used to if you go to Bangkok or whatever. Going back to that point about tourism and tourists, what I find in Chiang Mai as well is there's a lot of, it's not entirely built around tourism. It's its own city, it runs itself, people here to go to work, they have jobs. It's predominantly Thai, right? So if you go to Phuket or somewhere like that, and we've even seen that in the recent turn of events, Phuket completely shut down, Koh Phangan completely shut down, completely decimated, whereas Chiang Mai never really changed too much. A couple of nightlife areas shut down, or places were shut down if there were restrictions, but for the most part, Chiang Mai is just a Thai city, so I don't feel when I'm here, I feel like I have the benefit of being able to speak English to a lot of people, because a lot of people speak English here, and it's convenient, but at the same time, I don't feel like I'm living in like a expat bubble or a tourism bubble. I feel like I'm actually in Thailand. I'm around Thai people, I'm in a Thai city, and I feel like I can experience a culture, which I don't think in Phuket I would get. There are lots of other reasons why I live in Chiang Mai, which I'm not going to continue rambling on about because I don't want the video to be too long, but I'll cover them briefly. So Chiang Mai is obviously famous for its history, which I touched on at the beginning of the video. It has amazing nature if you're into hiking, going into the jungles, waterfalls, all of that sort of stuff. It has all of that. For me personally, I love the whole coffee shop culture. So a lot of the coffee that is, Chiang Mai is kind of famous for growing coffee. In the north of Thailand, it grows amazing coffee. And as a result, you've got a lot of coffee shops in Chiang Mai. I'll tell you an interesting fact is we're also right in the, what's the triangle called? The Golden Triangle, right? Where there used to be a lot of the opium trade in the north of Thailand, Burma and all of that stuff. And a big initiative several decades ago actually stopped farmers from growing opium and incentivized them to grow coffee instead. So that's why you have a big booming coffee culture in Chiang Mai, and that's why you have all the coffee shops and all of that sort of stuff. But I love that personally because I like to go to coffee shops with my laptop, work online, and do all that stuff. If you watch this channel, then you'll know about that, and you'll know probably about the co-working coffee shop scene in Chiang Mai, which is unrivaled, okay? It's like one of the hot spots. It's got probably the most coffee shops, co-working spaces in any city in the world. If you're into working online, then it's absolutely insanely convenient. It's super cool. Some of these places are insane. You're not going to get that anywhere else. You're not going to get that in any other city in Thailand. I've been to Bangkok and I've got my laptop. I want to work in a coffee shop. If I go to a coffee shop in Bangkok, it's kind of like working in a coffee shop back in the West. It's a coffee shop. People come there with families, there's kids. It's not really a co-working environment. Whereas most of the coffee shops, most of the spaces in Chiang Mai, they're designed for not digital nomads, but for sitting down and working with a laptop. And the reason for that actually is going on and on. But the reason for that is because Chiang Mai is also a university town, right? So that's why we have all the coffee shops, co-working spaces, because there's mostly uni students use them, but digital nomads come here and kind of use them as well, right? But I'm rambling. So yeah, those are some of the massive reasons that I love to stay in Chiang Mai, and I prefer this place over anywhere else. I'm going to address some of the reasons why people don't want to live in Chiang Mai, and kind of choose to live other places, right? So first off, there's no beach. So that's a big issue for a lot of people. A lot of people, when they move into Thailand, they say, well, I want to be by the beach. And that's true. It doesn't have the beach. Oh, now I was chatting to somebody about this the other night when I was in a bar. And, I said to them, I said, yes, Chiang Mai doesn't have a beach. However, I kind of like that it doesn't have a beach because it has rivers, it has lakes, it has waterfalls, it has all of that jungle sort of stuff. But the fact that it doesn't have a beach makes me actually look forward to going to the beach, right? So you know, if you come to Thailand, it can be really easy to just have an abundance of everything, be like overindulged. And I think if I lived on a beach, everybody that lives near a beach always says they never go to the beach, right? It's like I rented a condo once with a pool because I was like, you know, I'm going to use the pool and never use the pool. And for me, like not having a beach in Chiang Mai, when I travel somewhere else in Thailand and I go to like Koh Phangan, or it's actually before the whole situation, it's very easy to fly from Chiang Mai to Da Nang. It was just a 2-hour flight, literally 10 minutes to get to the airport here. You get out the airport in Da Nang, 10 minutes you're on the beach in Da Nang. It was easier actually to get to the beach in Da Nang in Vietnam than it was to get to the beach in Koh Phangan. But my point is, the fact that it doesn't have a beach, that makes me look forward to going to the beach. If I had a beach every day, I wouldn't appreciate it. So although I live in Thailand, I can get on a plane, which will cost me like $100, return, go somewhere, and I feel like I'm going on holiday. So I get that like holiday beach feeling, which you would get if you were living back in the West, looking forward to going to Thailand. I still get that. I'm like, oh man, I'm going down to Koh Phangan in a couple of weeks, and it costs me $100, and I get to go to the beach, and it's amazing. And so people knock Chiang Mai for not having a beach, but for me, I think it's better. I like not having a beach because it gives me something, you know, to look forward to. Another criticism of Chiang Mai, depending on who you are or what you want to do in Thailand, is nightlife. People think perhaps because Chiang Mai is way up here in the north, it doesn't actually have a nightlife, or a nightlife like Bangkok would have or Pattaya would have. And while it definitely doesn't have a nightlife like those cities, it's not as intense or as massive. Chiang Mai does have a nightlife. It does have a bar area. It does have a bar scene. It has nightclubs and stuff that backpackers go to. It has nightclubs that Thai people go to, and it has beer bars that, you know, expats and all that drink at. And it's enough. So this is what I always say to people about the nightlife in Chiang Mai. It's enough. The good thing about the nightlife here is it's enough that you can go out once or twice a week or however often you want to go out, and you can actually enjoy yourself, get a great night out, go to the bars. There's probably 20, 30 beer bars in Chiang Mai. There's a whole district. I've made videos on this channel. I've even done nightlife videos, so I'll link to those in the top. But it's more than enough to go out, have fun. But the good thing about it is if you went there every day, you would get bored. Okay, so if you go once a week, you're not going to get bored. If you go like once a month, you're not going to get bored of it. And this is good, in my opinion, because it stops you from being distracted by the nightlife. So if you lived in Pattaya, for example, or Bangkok, you could go out every single night of the week if you're that way inclined and never get bored. And this is what many people do, and it's kind of, you know, they crash and burn when they come to Thailand. I think if you come to Chiang Mai, you might have much less likelihood of that happening because the nightlife isn't so overwhelming that you can just do it every single day. Like I say, if you went and did it every single day, you would get completely bored of it. So it's there if you want it. It has nightlife. It's good enough. It's fun. It's as enjoyable as going out in Bangkok or whatever. You know, you don't have massive go-go's and all this sort of stuff, but, you know, you have them. You have, like, that stuff if you want it in Chiang Mai. It's just everything's much more scaled down, and it's not so, like, in your face. But it does have nightlife and has a good nightlife scene. It's just much, much, much smaller. Now, if I didn't live in Chiang Mai, where would I live? So I've traveled to most places in Thailand. Well, that's a lie. I've not traveled to most places. I've traveled to a lot of places, but I've never been like to Hat Yai in the south. The one place I've never actually been is Phuket, right? That's one place I've never been. I don't know why. I've been to Krabi. I've been to Bangkok, Pattaya, Isan, Udon, all these different places. If I wasn't living in Chiang Mai, I guess I would probably live maybe in Chiang Rai. No, I'm not sure. I would probably want to be somewhere where it's quiet. I do like Koh Phangan a lot, but it's very over the top with tourists. That would annoy me. Even Pai, I just went to Pai recently, which is about 3 hours from Chiang Mai, and Pai is beautiful. It's the most wonderful, like, picturesque place ever. And but the problem is with it, it's, you know, 80% of the people walking around there are foreigners, and you don't feel like you're in Thailand. I would have to go and live somewhere probably like in Isan, perhaps, or somewhere around there, or maybe like in the middle of the country, maybe a few hours north of Bangkok, because I don't think in some places, like in the middle of the country, you don't have as much convenience as you would have here in Chiang Mai. So I'd want to be within a good distance of Bangkok in case I wanted to go into it. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you one place that I would probably live if I didn't live in Chiang Mai. I'd probably live in Kanchanaburi. Kanchanaburi reminded me very much like Chiang Mai. It's within 2-3 hours on a train to Bangkok, and I did a whole video series on Kanchanaburi, but it has lots of history. It has a nice little bar scene. It's very convenient. I really, really like it. Kanchanaburi, very similar to Chiang Mai, maybe a little bit scaled down. So if you want to see videos on Kanchanaburi, again, I'll link to them up in the top. I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. That's my reasons for living in Chiang Mai. I don't think I've ever spoke about them on this channel. I hope I gave you some interesting things to think about if you are considering perhaps becoming an expat in Chiang Mai. And yeah, if you like this video, if you want to know how I moved to Thailand and how I'm able to live here, I've been out here for 7 years, then you probably want to check out this link. And again, if you like this video, then I'm pretty sure you're probably going to like this one as well. So that's all for me, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.